Hello students, how are you all doing? Since the time I have been teaching, I always ask this question for my students at the start of the class with a hope and a prayer that you are doing well, you're keeping well, your spirits are up, right? Your preparations are going well. But today, I know that many people are not doing as well, right? First of all, let's acknowledge one thing, that this was a very, very difficult paper. If you have found it difficult, it was difficult for the people who are giving it after years of hard work, or they are giving it for the first time. It was difficult for teachers who teach these subjects, who are trying to attempt these questions in the comfort of air-conditioned rooms, right? With all our resources at hand, without any psychological stress of negative marking or exam pressure, right? Even then, we were finding it difficult, right? So it was a very, very difficult paper. The cutoff is, of course, going to be low, right? Now, what made this question difficult, or what made these questions difficult, was two things simultaneously happening at the same time. On one hand, it was expecting you to know very, very extremely factual details about many of these things, many of these topics that they were asking about, right? But on the other hand, there were questions that required mains level analytical ability, right? So these two things are simultaneously happening in the same paper, right? That is generally not the case, or at least not the case in such a lopsided manner, right? So that is what is making this question difficult, or these papers difficult. Now, what we are going to do today is, we are with us going to look at the questions from geography and environment. But in no way, shape or form, this session is to make you feel even more miserable or disappointed in yourself. All the explanations that are being given here is for next year, right? Is how and what we can learn from these questions for our next year's preparation, for those who are giving it next year, right? It is not about, okay, it is such an easy question and you could have done it easily, right? That is not going to be the case. Yes, we can discuss, okay, where are the traps, where you could have left, what are the things that you can focus on in the next attempt, right? But it is in no way, shape or form a judgment on the people who have gotten any of these questions wrong. Many people have gotten it wrong. Most of the people have gotten many questions wrong, right? So with that out of the way, my name is Lalit Kishore, and today we'll discuss the geography and environment questions that have been asked in Prelims 2026. In that regard, let's look at the first question. Right now, what I have done is, I have grouped some of these questions. The numbers might be different in different questions, but I have grouped them. Say, for example, Indian geography, Indian physical geography, Indian factual geography, mapping related, world mapping related, and then environment questions at the last. So there are different types of questions. We have just grouped these questions with respect to their types, and we are going to look at them one by one. All right. So let's start with the Indian physical geography. And in that regard, the first question that we are going to see is with respect to Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Here it is asking about the correct option, right? There are three statements. So the first thing that they are asking is about the climate of Andaman and Nicobars. Now, what do we know about the climate of these regions? So it is lying in the tropical belt, where they are receiving direct rays of the sun, right? Now, because they are receiving direct rays of the sun, the climate would be warm, right? They will have tropical climate, warm climate. They are also very humid regions, right? So tropical and coastal regions are very humid, but they also face the moderating influence of the sea. So it will not be extremely hot temperatures. Generally, average temperatures is around 28 to 32 degrees. So it is moderate temperatures, but very humid temperatures and warm temperatures. All right. So in that regard, the first statement seems to be the correct one, right? Now let's look at the second one. Is that it is saying that it is receiving rainfall from both the southwest monsoon, that is the advancing monsoon, as well as the northeast monsoon. Is that the case? Are these regions receiving rainfall from, I'm hoping that most of you know that there are two branches of the monsoon. There is the Arabian Sea branch and the Bay of Bengal branch. So if you look at the monsoons in that regard, here the southwest monsoon is having an effect, but we also know that as the monsoon winds retreat, they are also causing rainfall in these particular regions, specifically here and here, right? So it is receiving rainfalls in both these time periods, right? southwest or advancing, and northeast, that is retreating monsoon, right? If you are able to correlate it with the vegetation, so these are the regions where you will find evergreen forest, right? Because they are able to receive such a high amount of rainfall. They have rainfalls above 400 centimeters on an average in a particular year. So if you are able to remember these particular things, you would know that these regions are tropical climate. They are humid climates. They are receiving rainfall from both advancing and retreating monsoon. Next, the third question was maximum precipitation, right, is between December and May. Here, what you can remember is that our summer months, after our monsoon months are after our summer months, right? And our monsoons hit towards the Indian subcontinent, the Kerala coast, by 1st of June. So precipitation cannot be higher before that, right? So if 1st of June is the time period of the onset of the monsoon in the Indian subcontinent, it could not have been that maximum precipitation is in May, right? Because it is asking about maximum. So which is the correct one? Because it is asking about the correct. So it will be which one? So it is humid and coastal, tropical coastal, and it receives rainfall from both southwest and northeast monsoon. The answer should be 1 and 2, right? Now, why I am saying should be? Because it is unpredictable service commission. So most of the answers what we are going to give you today is of course going to be, to the best of our abilities, the right answer. But after UPSC has released their answer key, you can find some discrepancies, and that is always the case. That is the case every single year, right? So this is with respect to the first question. Now, these things are something you are learning in different classes. Say for example, physical geography classes, say for example, Indian geography classes, and you are going to use it at the same time while attempting these questions, right? So it's a very important aspect, that don't think, okay, I don't know about monsoon. No, it's about all the different things that you have already studied, all about the precipitation, about the rainfall, right? So it is a combination of many things that you are going to find in different questions also, right? Now, the next question is with respect to the peninsular block of India, right? And it is asking about geographical features, right? So there is a submergence of parts of western coast due to tectonic activity. This is basically this region that it is talking about, right? Now we know some basic things, that our western coastal plains are submerged plains, our eastern coastal plains are emergent plains, right? This submergence and eventual subsidence happened when the Indo-Australian plate collided with the Eurasian plate, right? So it is with simultaneously when the Himalayas are going to be formed, this submergence is also happening around the same time period, around the tertiary time period. This you can also remember with the submerged city of Dwarka. So it is in this region only that we will find Dwarka also, right? So this will give you a hint that okay, there is a submerged plain in this area, right? So if you are talking about this particular aspect, the first question seems to be correct, right? So it happened in the western coast, it is a submergence, and finally subsidence also happened, right? And there is due to things happen due to tectonic activity. Then there is the presence of residual mountain ranges such as Velikonda and Mahendragiri. Now, first of all, where are these hills, right? What are residual hills? So if you would know that, especially in case of Aravallis, because they were quite a bit in news. So Aravallis at one point of time were even higher than Himalayas, right? But after years and years, 1.5 billion years ago, they were among the tallest mountain ranges in the world, right? Most probably they were the tallest mountain range in the world at point of time. Now, after years and years of weathering and erosion, they have eroded quite a bit, and now they are called hills, right? So these are called relict mountains or residual mountains, right? Now, in that regard, let's look at okay, where are these Velikonda and Mahendragiri? So Mahendragiri is somewhere around here, and Velikonda would be just above the Tamil Nadu region and in the Andhra Pradesh state, right? So Velikonda is in Andhra Pradesh and Mahendragiri is in Odisha, right, on the Eastern Ghats region, right? Now, are they relict mountains? Yes. Is it due to, what is the question here? So the presence of residual mountain ranges such as Velikonda and Mahendragiri hills are associated with peninsular block, of course, right? These are the portions of the peninsular block, Odisha as well as Andhra Pradesh, right? And deep V-shaped river valleys are formed by fast flowing rivers. Now we know that this particular aspect is a characteristic of which particular drainage? It is a characteristic of Himalayan drainage. V-shaped valleys is a characteristic of Himalayan drainage. U-shaped or broader valleys are a characteristic of which one? Peninsular drainage. So this is something that you must have a basic understanding about, right? This is coming from physical geography portion of Indian geography, right? So I'm hoping that you are able to eliminate this now, right? Now the first two options seem to be correct. So we will say 1 and 2, that submergence of parts of western coast due to tectonic activity, presence of residual mountain ranges such as Velikonda and Mahendragiri. All right, these both of these seem to be the right answers with respect to the features of the peninsular block. All right, next is the question from the Indian subcontinent. Now it is asking about a river. Now this is a very interesting river. This is a very interesting question, as well as this is a very interesting river, right? Now let's see this question. It is talking about antecedent drainage system. Now what are these antecedent drainage systems? So these are rivers that had a course before tectonic activity happened. In a very crude language, before the formation of Himalayas, they had a particular course and they kept with their course, right? They did not change their course with the arrival of tectonic activity, with the arrival of Himalayas. So that is antecedent, right? Before there was tectonic activity happening in a particular region, they had a course and they maintained their course, right? This is first option, right? Next, it flows through 3 countries. Let's see which of these are flowing through 3 countries. Is it Brahmaputra? So starting from Tibet, right? Then towards the northeastern region, and then finally going to Bangladesh, right? So it seems to be that this is a correct one, right? It is antecedent drainage system. That is also correct, right? Then it originates in the Tibetan plateau and is an important river for irrigation, right? That seems also to be correct, right? So Brahmaputra is fulfilling all these 3 things. Okay. Now in case of Indus, it is also having antecedent system. It is also flowing through Tibet, India and Pakistan, right? And it originates in the Tibetan plateau, of course, right? And it is an important river for irrigation. That is the case, right? Only Teesta is not able to fulfill the 3 countries thing because it is originating in India and flowing into Bangladesh. So we'll remove Teesta. All the other 3 rivers are able to fulfill these 3 conditions. Now the last aspect becomes really important, that it does not form distributaries. Now we know Brahmaputra and Indus form what? Deltas, right? And wherever you will find deltas, what is happening at the mouth of the river, right? So there are a lot of distributaries are seen in case of Brahmaputra as well as in case of Indus. It is only Satluj where you will not find distributaries, right? So in this way, they are asking questions with respect to rivers now, right? So whenever you are looking at these rivers, all of these rivers, now you will have to look at some distinctive features also, right? Now I'm hoping that when you are doing the Indus river system, there you will know that Satluj is meeting with Chenab, which is having river waters from which of the rivers? So there is Jhelum, right? There is Chenab, there is Ravi, there is Beas, right? All of these rivers, and finally when Chenab and Satluj are meeting, right, they are forming Panjnad, right? So there is a single stream that is forming Panjnad, and then it is going towards the Indus, right? So these things you can remember that, okay, there are no distributaries in case of Satluj. In fact, it is meeting all the 5 major tributaries in this regard, and then it is going towards the Indus, right? So this is with respect to the question with respect to rivers. Now in the next class or in the next prelims, you might be asked very different question, but rivers remain very important. Himalayan as well as peninsular rivers will remain very important, right? You must have a good understanding about these rivers. You should have at least basically 2-3 very important aspects. that which are the divisions, right, about these river systems, their drainage regions, right? Where are they originating? Where are they flowing from? Are there any distinctive elements about these rivers or their areas, right? Which are the newer projects that are coming, especially those that are in news, and not just of 1 year, but at least 1.5 to 2 years, right? These things remain very important, and then distinctive elements about them, right? So I'm hoping that till now you are with me, you are able to understand, okay, where is it trying to trap you, right? So then generally people would focus more on Indus and Brahmaputra here, but actually the answer was Indus. The answer was Satluj. All right. Now, before going to the next question, there is a 50% sale happening on UPSC, PCS, teaching exam, judiciary, SSC and CUET exam, that is on the Drishti platform. So if you are interested in any of these courses, you can call on 87501, 87501, right? If you are interested in IAS GS foundation course, it is also being given at a 50% discount of just 55,000 rupees, and you can call for it on 87501, 87501. All right. Now with this out of the way, let's look at the next question. That is the Indian state that is not correct. Now this is very important that it is asking you not correct. Here there is a huge chance of silly mistake, right? Now let's say Uttar Pradesh shares its boundaries with highest number of Indian states. Is it the case that UP is having most number of states on its borders? So if you see UP, it starts with Uttarakhand. There is also a very small cross section that is touching with Himachal, right? Then there is Haryana, it is not touching Punjab, of course, right? Then there is Rajasthan also at its borders. MP, of course, is a huge border with MP. Then a very small section is jutting into Chhattisgarh, right? Then that section is also touching Jharkhand and Bihar. So how many states is it covering? And of course the Union Territory of Delhi. So it is covering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 states, as well as 1 Union Territory, right? On the northern side, of course, it is sharing its borders with Nepal, right? International borders with Nepal. So it is having the most amount of states on its borders, right? So first question seems to be correct, right? Next, Rajasthan shares the longest international border among all Indian states. Now this is a very tricky question in what regard? So if you are able to remember the map, it seems like a very, very long border, right? That Rajasthan shares with Pakistan, right? The regions of Pakistan are Sindh and Punjab, right? But if you actually are able to remember that our longest land border is actually with Bangladesh, right? More than 4,000 kilometers of land border we are sharing with Bangladesh, right? So it is the case that Rajasthan has a long international border, right? More than 1,000 kilometers, right? But actually, the right answer would be, it is what? It is West Bengal that is sharing the longest land border with any international border with which country? It is Bangladesh. So the correct is West Bengal, right? Next is, so Rajasthan would not be the case. Sikkim is the only state that shares its boundary with just one other Indian state. Now, this is an easier portion because, of course, there is Sikkim that is sharing its borders with West Bengal, but there is also Meghalaya here that is only sharing its borders with Assam. These are some of the questions. If your physical portion is done well, you will be able to answer properly, right? It might take some time because you will have to at least read these questions twice, because there are small traps that have been given, but these are relatively easier questions that have been asked from Indian physical geography, right? So I'm hoping that this is a particular aspect that you are now clear about. Now, what you can see from these questions till now is that there is a particular pattern in which they are asking you these questions, right? There is a particular pattern, right? They are focusing on these aspects where you will see that they are less known aspects, right? And that has been a favorite of UPSC since very long back, right? Now, of course, it becomes very common knowledge, but before these exams, these things many people would not have thought about, right? But this kind of understanding, this kind of awareness is expected from you, right? Now, the next question is properly from current affairs, right? even though we are looking at it here, but it is mostly current affairs based question, right? But let's see what are some of the basic things. And in this particular case, before attempting this question, if you do not have 100% clarity about these things, you must not attempt them, right? If you have not heard about even one or two of these places, you should not attempt these questions, right? It is not something that you could have known, right, if you have not already studied or encountered it before the exam, right? So the first one is Maitri Setu, built over Feni River, connects Ramgarh in India to Sabroom in Bangladesh. It's such a common, almost very interesting but very common thing that what UPSC has done is, now people would associate Ramgarh with India and Sabroom with Bangladesh, but actually this has been switched, right? So Sabroom is in India and Ramgarh is in Bangladesh. Other things are right. So Maitri Setu is over Feni River. It is between Tripura and Bangladesh, right? But the places have been switched. So even if the first part is correct, the second part is not, right? That is what it makes this paper very difficult, this question very difficult, right? So if you have absolute clarity about it, then only answer these kind of questions, right? Now the next one is Jhula Ghat, right? Is a suspension bridge. Now it in itself becomes an important aspect, that whether you are able to remember that this is a suspension bridge or not. If you have encountered this particular news, so with respect to the name also you can associate that Jhula and suspension are similar words, right? Now between India and Myanmar, that is not the case. It is with which country? It is with Nepal, right, near the Kali River, right? So again it becomes very difficult, right, that is it a suspension bridge or not, right? Of course India and Nepal is a different matter altogether, but is it a suspension bridge or not? That makes it very difficult option, right? Now the next is the Mechi bridge is up and its approaches connect Pani Tanki bypass in India with Kakarvita in Nepal. That is actually the right option, right? But now you can understand how difficult this option becomes, right? That is it Pani Tanki bypass? Is it connecting Kakarvita in Nepal? Is it India and Nepal only and not any other country, right? So in these things, right, if only and only if you are 100% sure about all of these matters, then only attempt this question. Of course, this is the correct statement. So it is 3 only, right? But it is a very difficult question. I would suggest if most of you would have left this question, that would have been better, until unless you have encountered this before the exam. All right. Now, let's look at the next one, which is relatively on the easier side, because the Strait of Hormuz is so much in news, and it is asking about from which of the following countries crosses the Strait of Hormuz to reach out to the Indian Ocean, right? So basically it is asking about the countries that are in the Persian Gulf region, right? And which are these countries? So if you remember, there is Bahrain and there is Qatar, right? Syria and Egypt are not in the Persian Gulf. So this is Qatar and just above it is Bahrain. Syria is here, right? And Egypt is of course here. So Syria is connected to Middle Eastern region, right? Mediterranean region, Middle Eastern region, right? And Egypt is near the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, not near the Persian Gulf, not in any way near the Strait of Hormuz. This is relatively easier in that regard because this was very much in news in the last few months. All right. So this was easy. In a way, you can say that of the very few questions in this paper that would be considered easy, right? This is one of them. Next is the statement with respect to Lake Turkana, right? Now, these have been the lakes in the East African Rift Valley have been a favorite of UPSC, especially in the mapping perspective, right? Now, let's see what is it asking about Lake Turkana. So, is it the largest desert lake in the world? That is the case, right? Again, it becomes a question that have you encountered it before, right? If you have encountered it before, then only you will be able to answer this. Otherwise, there is no point in going forward with this question, right? But if you would have encountered this, especially because these regions in the East African Rift Valley have very, very important weightage in Indian UPSC exams, right? So this becomes important that this is the largest lake in the world. The lake is situated in South Sudan, right? Along the eastern fringe of Sahara Desert. Here, both of these things are wrong, right? It is not situated in South Sudan, right? And it is not on the eastern fringe of the Sahara Desert, right? Now, this is something that is very important for you to remember, because here it is very rare that this statement is wholly wrong, right? And in that cases, here you will be able to answer correctly if you have read this properly from the world geography perspective, that this was where, in which particular country would you find this Lake Turkana? So it is close, if you look at this. So it is close to South Sudan. This is South Sudan, this is Sudan, this is Egypt, right? It is close to South Sudan, but the country is which one? It is Kenya, right? So the country is Kenya, right? This country is having its opening towards the Indian Ocean region. That also makes it important. Now, there is a conflict area with respect to Somalia and Somaliland, right? There is a conflict with respect to Ethiopia and Eritrea, right? Great Renaissance Dam is seen in this region, right? The river White Nile and Blue Nile are seen in this region. So in any way, it is very important. But with respect to this question, it is in Kenya, right? This is Lake Turkana, right? So it is the largest desert lake in the world. It is situated not in South Sudan, in Kenya, and it is not in the eastern fringe of the Sahara Desert. So these are not desert regions properly, right? Here you would find the Sahara Desert, right, in the Sudan region and not in the South Sudan region. These are grassland regions, right? Next is the last one, that this lake is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, all right, and is also referred to as the Jade Sea. Now, Jade Sea is important because of a particular blue-green algae that gives it this jade color or a bluish green color, right? So of course these first and three seem to be the right answers, right, in this particular question. All right, is this clear? All of these regions that you are finding here, this East African Rift Valley region is very important for you. East African Rift Valley region is very important. This is the Arabian Plate, right? The Red Sea region remains very important, right? This is of course the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean region. The countries that are lying around this is remaining to be very, very important. Of course, because of many of the conflict areas, UPSC is going to ask you even in the next question, in the next attempt also, in 2027 also, right? So you must have good understanding about especially this particular region of Africa, right? Physical geography wise also, Indian geography, the effect of this region on Indian geography, especially monsoon also, as well as mapping related. All right. Now, the next question is with respect to Vizhinjam International Seaport, right, and its importance as a structural shift in India's maritime trade and logistics policy, right? So this comes from economic geography portion, right? So as much as there is mapping element in it, it is also about Indian geography, Indian economic geography, right? So it is talking about that by functioning exclusively, now this becomes very important keyword here, as a domestic cargo hub to reduce reliance on coastal shipping, reduce reliance, domestic cargo hub, all of these become really important for you to consider, right? Coastal shipping and eliminate the need for foreign collaborations. If it is trying to eliminate the need for foreign collaborations, why would we name it international seaport, right? If it is an international one, why would we try to eliminate foreign collaborations? So that does not seem to match here, right? Now, the next question it is being asked is that it is focusing on primarily. Now, again, this becomes very important. Now, in future, it might be the case that we are focusing on passenger cruise tourism, but right now, passenger cruise tourism is not a primary focus of this particular international seaport, right? So again, here also, it is a wrong option. And next is by leveraging natural deep draft. That is correct. And it is on the Kerala coast, right? And we know that there is subsidence and submergence in this coast, right? It has deeper drafts, almost 18 to 20 meters of draft you can see in this particular region. That you don't have to remember, but at least you should understand that our western portion has natural harbors, has conditions for natural harbors, deeper ports, right? And our eastern portion, because of the emergent play, does not have these conditions, right? So because of its natural deeper draft and strategic location to reduce dependence on foreign transshipment ports, to enhance revenue retention and reposition India in regional maritime trade. Of course, there is a lot of things that are being said here, but one thing that you can focus on here, right? So it is talking about strategic location to reduce dependence on foreign transshipment ports. Now, what is this strategic location all about? So if you focus here, there is a particular shipping lane that is flowing through this region, right? If you connect here in UAE, there is Jebel Ali, right? Through here, it goes to Colombo and then it moves towards Singapore, right? So most of over 75% of our trade, major big container trade, is happening through Jebel Ali, Colombo and Singapore, right? And there our shipments come and then they are provided into smaller ships and then they are able to dock in our waters, right? So most of this is happening because of India related trade, but they are being provided, these containers are having to dock at different other ports from different other countries, right? So there we can do what? So there we can reduce dependence on foreign transshipment ports, right? Of course, that will give us some revenue also, so revenue retention also, and reposition India as the regional maritime trade, right? Now we know that this particular region is primarily from very ancient times has been primarily dominated by India and India inbound and outbound trade, right? So from ancient time periods when Romans were coming here, right, to the medieval time periods during the age of colonization or just before the age of colonization, you see that all of these regions were serving Indian trading networks, right? So in that regard, it becomes very important that we are trying to reclaim our position in this region, right? So this is with respect to the question on Winsingham. So this is of course wrong. It is, we are not focusing on primarily on passenger cruise tourism. We are mostly related to the deep draft and bigger vessels that we want them to dock in this particular region, right? So it is 3 only. All right. Now, for people who are able to clear this prelims exam, it is the Drishti IAS is bringing about a very important scheme, right? A very important initiative, that is Asmita scheme, right? It is an initiative of Drishti IAS, is in Hindi as well as English medium, right? So there is both mediums that are provided here, right? That if you are able to qualify prelims, right, you are able to get hostel facilities, group mentoring, mock test, library and peer learning, mentorship support, as well as regular answer practice for free if you are a student of Drishti IAS GS Foundation course, online or offline, right, or even pen drive, right? And if you are not from this particular course, right, you will get it at a very low cost, right, at a very, very reasonable cost. Okay. Now, what are some of the basic things? So there is limited number of seats available, right? So you will have to apply as soon as you are getting to know that you are able to clear it. And for Hindi medium students, it is even more cheaper. It is very, very reasonable, right? So all of these things are covered under Asmita scheme. If you are able to clear it, and really hope and wish that you are able to do it well, right? Of course, there will be an element of luck involved, right? But I'm really hoping that you are able to clear it, and then you will be able to get all of these facilities at no cost or a very low cost. All right. So now let's look at the question from Rain-Fed Area Development Initiative of the. Now we have completed our geography section. Unfortunately, there was very little question, very small amount of questions from geography. Environment also, surprisingly, this time there were little amount of questions, not more than 10 questions, right? Now in that regard, let's look at this National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, right? Here it is asking about rain-fed area. Now we know that there is a difference between irrigated area and rain-fed area. Rain-fed area is mostly dependent on rains. Mostly in case of ours, it is monsoon rains. So in case of Rain-Fed Area Development Initiative, what are some of the basic things? So it is encouraging monoculture in rain-fed areas. Now, in monoculture, you are sowing just one crop throughout the region, right? Throughout the area, right? If you would encourage monoculture, it will reduce crop diversity, it will increase the risk, right? And in case that rain fails, your whole crop will be destroyed, right? So we will not encourage but discourage monoculture, right? We would try and look at diversifying our crops, right? So this is not correct. Next, increasing rice cultivation in irrigated regions. But how can it be a portion that is covered under rain-fed area development? We can think about increasing rice irrigation in irrigated regions, but that cannot be covered under rain-fed area, right? Rain-fed area by its very definition are regions where irrigation is not the primary mode, right? It is the basically rainfall that is the primary mode of cultivation, right? So again, this seems to be a wrong answer. Now, enhancing productivity and minimizing climate risk through integrated farming methods. Basically, we are trying to use different technologies, different types, dairy, right, and other things, and we are trying to do our farming in these particular areas, right? This particular aspect of integrated farming systems in different ways has been asked before also, right? So this becomes really important for you to have a good understanding of integrated farming systems, because they have been pushed by the government through the ministries quite a bit, right? We want people to switch towards integrated farming systems, right? Of course, there is a correlation with respect to our economic development also. It is correlated with farmers' income also, but it becomes really important. Of course, after these two things are wrong, the only answer that can be right is 3 only. Is this all right till now? All good? No issues till here? All right? All right. If there is any doubt in any of these sections, you can ask, of course, but I'm hoping that till now it is all clear, right? Now, the next one is about Madhav National Park. Now, this is directly from current affairs, right? It is asking that it was declared as a tiger reserve in India in 2025, right? That is the case, right? This is a very recent development, and this particular region is a very important region also in many cases, especially with respect to our environment, because there are a lot of things happening around the same area, right? So basically what is happening is that tiger reserve in this particular region, there used to be tigers till 1970s, right? But slowly and slowly they lost out from here. They were not found in this particular region for the next 30-40 years, right? Now later on in 2023, tigers were reintroduced in this particular region, right? And then finally in 2025 this region was declared as a tiger reserve, right? Now if you look at this particular region, this is the region that we are talking about. It is a very important region because you will also find Ranthambore here, right? You will also find the Chambal sanctuary here, wildlife sanctuary here. So there are other things also happening in this region with respect to environment, right? That is why it becomes an important aspect. Now, here, see, a small spelling mistake has been made by UPSC, but this will confuse a lot of people because it was in news also. So this is Sankhya, right? From the philosophical system, Sankhya Sagar, right? It is not Shakya Sagar, right? Shakya is the clan of Buddha, right? It is not Shakya Sagar, it is Sankhya Sagar, right? Which is designated as a Ramsar site situated within the national park. All of these are correct, right? But it is actually Sankhya Sagar. Now, if you take it that there was just basically a small mistake here, that is all right. Then no issues. Then of course it is correct, right? But if you take that the name was actually Sankhya Sagar, this becomes a difficult question in that regard, right? Because first of all, of course, it is a Ramsar site. Its name is Sankhya Sagar and not Shakya Sagar, right? And both of these terms are very important historically and philosophically as well as historically. So it becomes really important that you are clear about this. So this will go into some kind of reconsideration, if this particular question has not been corrected, right? Now, its area is shared between MP and Rajasthan. That is not the case, right? It is squarely within MP. In this particular region, you will see it is in MP, in the Shivpuri district, right? So it is not having any correlation with Rajasthan. But yes, this tiger corridor is there between these two regions. So it is there between Madhav as well as Ranthambore. But the Madhav National Park is not shared between Rajasthan and MP. All right. So in that regard, what are some of the basic things? So this is wrong. This one is correct. And if you are able to say that, okay, it is Shakya Sagar and not Sankhya Sagar. So of course, 1 and 2 can be the answer. And if they go with that Sankhya Sagar it is, then it is only one will be the answer. Now this becomes a bit of a debatable question, right? So it is interesting that even UPSC can make spelling mistakes, or is it a deliberate mistake and they want you to remember that Shak and Sank, right? Let's see. So we will not speculate on these things. Let's wait for the answer key to come out, right? Now, let's see the next question. That is with respect to first Plan VO certified reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation project. Basically, they want you to focus on first Plan VO certified REDD plus project, right? Now, we have a good understanding about REDD plus projects and RED plus projects in India, right? All of these are actually ongoing projects in India. So, all of these are correct. They want you to focus that which is the first Plan VO certified project. So, Plan VO is about community participation, right? And which is this particular project? It is actually the Khasi Hills Community RED Plus project, right? That they are talking about here, right? Now, why is it important? What are some of the basic things? Especially from this northeastern portion, there are a number of questions that have been asked. So, we will focus on this particular region a bit more, all right? So, if you look at this particular region, it has been very, very important with UPSC, right? So, the answer is of course Khasi Hills Community Project. This Plan VIVO is about community-led participation in these kind of projects where it is about climate, whether it is about water conservation or all these things, right? And where is this happening? So it is in the Khasi. So there is Garu Khasi Jaintia. It is in the East Khasi Hills that is happening. There are 10 tribal communities that are involved in this particular project, right? You are only able to answer this question if you have a good understanding about them. Otherwise, this is very factual, very important, but very factual, and you should leave these kind of questions even if you have heard about them. If you are not absolutely clear about these questions, you should not attempt them, right? So this is first Plan VIVO RED Plus project in India. Others are also correct, right? These are also ongoing projects, but they are not first Plan VIVO project in India, right? Now, this particular region becomes really important. So we are going to look at them even later also. So now this question is regarding foxtail orchid, right? Now, foxtail orchid, again, if you have heard about this, then only answer these kind of questions. Otherwise, there is no no harm in leaving these questions. In fact, if you would have left good amount of questions, like if you would have left 10, 15, 20 questions, that is better in this particular kind of paper, right? Where there is so much factual element involved, right? Next. So let's look at that. It is an epiphytic orchid, right? Now, what are epiphytes? First thing that you should know about is that what are these epiphytes? So they are plants that are able to, especially if you look at some of these plants, that are able to sustain themselves around the trees, right? Around the barks of the trees, right? But they are not taking any nutrient from these trees, right? They are not taking any nutrient from their regions where they are situated in, right? So they are getting their nutrients from the air itself, from the rain itself, from the debris itself, but they are clinging onto these kind of trees, barks, etc., right? So first important thing is that are they epiphytic orchid? So they are epiphytes. They are able to remain on these particular kind of organisms, but they are not deriving their nutrients, deriving their moisture from them, but they are actually deriving from rain, from air, from debris only. All right. So very important that these are plants that are growing on other plants. All right. That is why they are called epiphytes, right? Next, the species is endemic, right? Endemic would mean that it is only found in Northeast India. That is not the case. It is found in other countries of Southeast Asia also. So it is not endemic to Northeast India, right? It is an epiphyte. It is a state flower of Arunachal and Assam. Now, this becomes very factual. If you know, you know. If you don't know, just leave it, right? So it is, of course, correct. So 1 and 3 only is the answer in case of foxtail orchids. All right. So because they are asking about epiphytes, so you must have an understanding that these are what kind of plants that are living on other plants, right? But they are not taking out nutrients from them, right? And in this case, what was asked, so is it endemic? That is not the case. They are found in Northeast India, but they are also found in other places. If they would not have been found in other places, then they would have been endemic to in Northeast India. State flower of Arunachal and Assam is of course the right answer, right? So it is 1 and 3. Now the next question is with respect to the Western Hollock gibbons, right? Now in this regard, they are asking for correct answer, right? Now the first statement is talking about that whether they are an ape species. So it is an ape species found in a sanctuary in Northeast India, right? Is that the case? Do we know about any of such Western gibbon sanctuaries or places that where you would find Western gibbon in India? Where is it? So it is mostly found again around the same region, Meghalaya and Assam, right? If you talk about the sanctuary, which is this? So it is the Holongapur gibbon sanctuary in Assam, right? It is Holongapur gibbon sanctuary in Assam, right? So it is a species from the endangered list of IUCN. All of the species that have been mentioned in from India in the endangered list become really important. Critically endangered is very, very important, but endangered list is also very important, especially those that are relating to either South Indian regions or Northeast India, right? This we have known for a while now, right? In that regard, the second question is, second statement is talking about they have specialized brachiation and can easily swing between trees, right? So they are, even if you have at least have any knowledge about them, if you have seen any of their pictures or videos, right? This is a very common thing that is seen, that they have very long arm and they are going from one branches to another, right? So they are able to swing from one branch to another. So they are having specialized brachiation, right? They possess a strong and heavy build like gorillas and are remarkably agile tree climbers. They are remarkably agile tree climbers, but they are not very strong and heavy. They are in fact smaller ape species, right? So in that regard, this portion, strong and heavy build, is wrong. Other part is of course correct. They have specialized brachiation, that is correct, and they are seen in the endangered list, that is correct. So here the answer should be 1 and 2, right? This is an important species, especially because it was in news in the last 1 year, right? Now, shall we move ahead? Is this clear till now? All right. Now let's look at the mangrove ecosystems. Now this is something that we read about properly. We have of course the world's largest mangrove forest in the Sundarbans, right? We have to have good knowledge about them. This can be asked again and again. You can expect it to be asked even in future also, right? So it is talking about best explains the rationale. Why should we protect mangroves? Basically, they are asking for the reasons. And the first one it is asking is that mangroves reduce tidal energy and store fresh water, making them ideal sites for paddy cultivation. Now, if it is talking about paddy cultivation, right, will it be about climate resilience? In fact, paddy cultivation, if you have read about anything about the mangrove forest, so paddy cultivation is among the chief reasons for deforestation in mangrove forest, right? So how would this be a positive thing, right? So paddy cultivation is very, very important in this particular region, but in a negative sense, right? They are leading to deforestation of mangrove forest, right? Next, they're salt sensitive. They are salt tolerant. They are not salt sensitive, right? They are in fact quite resistant to salt, right? So they are not salt sensitive. Now this is a vocabulary thing that if you are able to remember that they are salt tolerant, right? Salt resistant, not salt sensitive, right? Roots filter seawater, making mangroves key to converting coastal land into freshwater aquaculture zone. Of course, because it is talking about salt sensitive, it should be wrong, right? Let's see how UPSC interprets it. But according to me, this should be a wrong statement because they are salt tolerant species. All right. Next, the third one, which must be correct, that is by withstanding tidal surges and offering biomass resources, of course, mangroves function both as natural bioshields, right? Because they are reducing the tidal flow by as much as 90%, right? And livelihood basis for rural communities. Of course, the people they are living there are getting their livelihoods from the mangrove forest. So this becomes a really important aspect about mangroves. 3 is of course correct. First one was wrong because it was actually a negative part, paddy cultivation in that regard, and they are not salt sensitive, they are salt tolerant vegetation. All right. This is with respect to mangroves. This is an important section. This has been asked before. This might be asked again, right? Next is, now we are coming to lengthier questions. Now this is as much a question from general studies as it is from reading comprehension, right? As it is from logical reasoning, it is as much a question from CSAT as it is from general studies. Now let's see what it is talking about. So it is talking about India's response to climate change, right? It is talking about India's long-term low emission development strategy, LT LEDS, right? Is a crucial tool for achieving net zero emissions by 2070. It's basically trying to trap you that whether it is 2070 or 2050, it is actually 2070. That is correct, and it is about net zero emissions. Then India's fourth biennial update report, BUR4 report, submitted in December 24, recorded around 8%. So it was actually 7.93%. So around 8% is correct in that regard. And in UPSC exams, you always have to go for most appropriate, right? So it is actually correct. Around 8% is correct here. Decrease in greenhouse emissions from 2020 over 2019. So this is the correct statement, right? This also seems to be the correct statement. Climate resilient development necessarily depends on quick and short term achievement of emission reduction targets. It is talking about long term targets, right? So quick and short term is an aspiration, but generally speaking, that is not the case, especially in things that we are planning for 50 years, right? In fact, India's focus is on long-term reduction, right? And not on short-term and quick reduction, because that will really affect us economically, right? In our developmental journey, right? We are right now a very developing country, right? We are a poor country, and with PCI of around just $3,000, right? Per annum, per capita. So it becomes really important for us to do it in a gradual manner. That is why we have set ourselves such targets, right? So this seems to be the wrong option now, but that is not what is being asked, right? They are asking what is the correct statement here. So now you will have to hold your horses, right? Let's see. So statement 1 is empirically supported by statement 2. Is that the case? That is it being supported by statement 2? Let's see. So it is saying that we are crucial for achieving net zero emissions by 2070, and a BUR4 report has recorded around 8% decrease. So we can say that in a way statement 1 is being empirically supported by statement 2. So statement 2 is in a way supporting or giving it data to support statement 1. In some sense, it seems to be the right answer. Statement 3 contradicts the approach implicit in statement 1. That is the case. Quick and short term, here long term. That is also seems to be correct, right? Now this becomes really lengthy paper in that regard, right? Generally, UPSC papers, especially in one language, is around 20 to 22 pages. This was 26 pages long because of such questions, right? Now let's come to the third statement here. So statement 1 and statement 3 together establish the premise of long-term sustainability. If it is contradicting each other, so how would they establish this premise? So that is not the case. Now which two are the answer? So it's actually statement 1 and 2 that are correct, right? That was also the case here also, because we thought that this is a wrong statement, but this becomes really important that it is as much a question from GS and that it is as much is in from comprehension, from logical reasoning also, right? So this is a very interesting question in that regard. There is a possibility that this kind of question is more in the future also, because they have introduced now this kind of question. So at least 2 to 3 years you can expect these kind of questions to carry forward. All right. So this was a very difficult question by that, especially because of the time constraint, right? Not because of the difficulty of question, but just because of the factual element regarding it, but also because of the time that is being taken to just understand this question, right? Now, the next one is about Amur falcons, right? Amur falcons at Doyang Lake in Nagaland each year, right? Now, this is with respect to arrival of Amur falcons in Nagaland, right? Where are they coming from? So they are coming from Mongolia, right? They are coming from Mongolia and they are going towards which region? Can anyone tell me? Do you remember? They are coming from Mongolia and they are going towards South Africa, right? So from summer to winter, right? That is their journey, right? Now this is very important that they are arriving in Nagaland. Now what used to happen in Nagaland was, especially before 2010s, right? People used to hunt for them, right? People used to eat them, right? Now what happened was, from this hunting culture, we put in efforts, and especially the people that are living there put in efforts. So it was a community-led effort, right? Community-led conservation effort to now protecting them, right? So this Amur falcon is a very important aspect of environmental conservation also, community participation also, and of course they are very important birds among the very important migratory birds that are coming to India. Right. Now, this basic aspect, if you have known, then you can answer this question. That, let's see, first statement is saying that they are asking for, of course, correct, right? So first statement is that it showcases how sustained long local conservation efforts can contribute to arrival and protection of international migratory birds. Of course, that is the correct answer. It reflects the global success of advanced tracking technologies that guide migratory birds back to their stepover sites. That is not the case, right? They are being guided through their own mechanisms, right? There are important mechanisms that are happening inside their own rate, so that they are able to take these 1,000 kilometers of journey, right? So we are not using any technology to guide them. We are able to use these technologies to basically do what? We are able to monitor them, but not guide them, right? So that seems to be the wrong answer. It confirms that Amur falcons have adapted to permanent residency in India, right? That is still now not the case, that they are looking for permanent residency in India, right? Because they are migratory birds, so they are not looking for permanent residency. They are stepping over, while they are going towards the southern hemisphere, right? So in that case, which is the correct answer? It is the statement 1 is only the correct answer, right? Now this correct and incorrect you must have some consideration for, because it can give you really important silly mistakes here, right? Now the next one is with respect to the green hydrogen, right? Now if you tell me, what is the difference between gray hydrogen, right, blue hydrogen and green hydrogen? Any idea? If you know these things, then this question is relatively attemptable. Otherwise, it will become very difficult. So in green and blue, we are using natural gas, right? Natural gas. What is the difference then between gray and blue? So in case of gray, there is a lot of emissions that are happening. In case of blue hydrogen, there is emissions, but there are lesser emissions because we are doing carbon capture. In case of green hydrogen, there is very little or no emissions, right? Because we are using here water, right? We are using water in this case, right? That is why it becomes very important that you have a good understanding about these three important hydrogen concepts. They have been in use quite a bit in the recent time period, right? Now, what is it asking about? So it is decarbonized hydrogen obtained from natural gas. This is about green one, right? So it is obtained from natural gas, reforming combined with carbon capture and storage. So this is this the case in case of green hydrogen? That is not the case. Where is it happening? It is happening in case of blue hydrogen. This first statement is about blue hydrogen, right? Where there is carbon capture that is happening, right? Next is it is produced using electrolysis of water with electricity generated by renewable energy. That seems to be the case, right? That seems to be the correct answer. Let's see the next one, that is that National Green Hydrogen Mission of India aims at for abatement of nearly 50 MMTs of annual greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Now, the first thing that you must know is what is the meaning of abatement? It is basically trying to reduce it. If that is the case, then we are saying that yes, that is the correct answer. So here 2 and 3 becomes the right one, right? Because it is talking about natural gas, it is talking about blue hydrogen here, right? Of course, carbon capture is happening. There is lesser emissions, but there are emissions. It is in case of water when it is used for hydrogen production that you see that there is very little or no emissions that are happening. All right. Now, I think the last question from this particular section is that it is the most significant implication of obtaining OECO text certification of for Airy silk. Now, where is Airy silk coming from? Do you know? It is coming from Assam silk. Airy silk is also known as Ahimsa silk, right? Ahimsa silk, because here worms are not dying, right? It is much more in a way ethical way of producing silk, right? So in that regard, let's look at this OECO text certification. It allows Indian exporters to compete in high-end markets that prioritize chemical-free products. That is the case. Ethical and chemical-free, the buyers who are looking for these kind of products are looking for these kind of things. So chemical should be less or should not be there, and it should be ethically produced. So that is the case. Next, and generally speaking, these kind of products are higher value products, right? So our exporters would be able to sell these kind of things. And next is with respect to, it confirms that Airy silk meets international safety, environment and quality standards, enabling its entry into premium eco-conscious markets, right? That is a very, very important aspect that is directly related to our effort to do what? To market this in export markets also, right? So in that regard, which you would see that both these 1 and 2 are correct, right? So in this case, what are the two things that are happening? So this certification is given in Germany, right, for the products that are chemical free and for products that are ethically produced, right? So they are toxic free, they are eco-friendly, right? In that regard, both 1 and 2 seem to be the correct answer, right? Now this becomes really important that at last also I will tell you that if you have done well in this exam, kudos to you. It's a very good thing. You can avail Asmita scheme if you feel like you need some help there. But if you feel that this paper was very difficult for you, right? That is going to be the case for many people. It was the case with me. It is going to be the case with many people, right? I will tell you from my side, you are not alone. There are many other people who are facing this dilemma, right? There are things that you can focus on for the next session, of course, right, for 2027. But there are things there might be things that are in the offing, right? What are these things? So you must be prepared for longer answers, right? Longer questions, longer answers, right? You must be prepared for a bit of much more in-depth knowledge about many of the things. In fact, mains level analytical knowledge are seen in many of these questions, right? So we have discussed around 18-20 questions. Many of the questions are very, very analytical in nature, right? Very close reading of question is required. One half is correct, one half is wrong. Very small trap is set there, right? So these kind of things can be seen in the near future also, right? Generally, if UPSC introduces a trend, it sustains for next 2-3 years. So you will there is a possibility that you will face such kind of questions even in the next year also. All right. So we have looked at some of the questions. There are questions that are straightforward, in at least now it feels straightforward after the exams are over, right? Of course, it would not feel straightforward when you are giving the exam under time constraint and everything. But now they feel straightforward. I'm hoping that you were able to learn something from this session. All right. That is all for today. Thank you so much. Take a deep breath, right? I am telling you, next day is better, right? Every next day that you are working hard, that you are putting on your efforts is going to be better. Don't lose heart, right? If you are feeling it difficult, everyone is, right? So I really wish you well. Keep yourself hydrated, right? It's a very hot and humid month, right? And try to take care of yourself, right? Do try to talk to your parents, your families, your support system, your friends, right? And take care of yourself. Thank you so much. Wish you all the very best.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.